Alrighty, so now this is going to be a more conceptual video. This is one of my favorite concepts with investing. Once I understood this concept, I knew I had to get into real estate. So the concept we're going to talk about is anti-fragility and barbell investing. And so the title of this next segment is Options Are the Tool of the Anti-Fragile. So fragile things, fragile people, you need to handle with care. I've made it a personal goal, and I believe real estate investing, the way I like to invest, is in an anti-fragile manner. So what we're all trying to do as investors is make decisions without perfect knowledge. And the way I believe the wealthy do this is they invest this way, with a known loss with unlimited upside. I'm going to get more into that. And so here's the 4 definitions. This is one of the best books I've ever read. This skyrocketed, catapulted my real estate investing career. This got me going. But you have 3 types of investment types, or 3 types of thing in life. You have fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. So fragile, like I just went over, it's very self-explanatory. When disorder or chaos comes about, it breaks very easily. Now, robust just means tough. I like to explain the difference on this stuff. It's like, if you look at a piece of china in my wife's dining room right now, a piece of china is very fragile. Any disorder, any rocking, it falls and breaks. Robust is just tough. The dining room table we have, it's tough. It's got my kids slamming stuff on it. It's got kids shaking it all the time. Big family dinner, it's tough. So when uncertainty or chaos comes about, it's solid, it's stable. It takes a beating and keeps on ticking. But anti-fragility, on the other hand, it's more than that. Anti-fragile actually gets better with order and chaos and experience. And so another way to look at this is from Ray Dalio's principles. You'll see this a lot in any of the stuff I'm teaching. But this is an example of anti-fragility. This is basically how I like to operate. Is I have an audacious goal, I fail, I experience chaos, disorder, I learn, I improve, and then I go for more audacious goals. It's a constant cycle, just over and over again. This is the anti-fragile loop. One more time. It's not straight line success. It's audacious goals, failure, chaos, disorder. You learn, and then you improve, and then you go get after more audacious goals. And so the way I like to, this is from Nassim Taleb, and I like to reiterate the story he tells. This kind of discusses how anti-fragile investors invest. So there was this guy back in the day, a philosopher named Thales of Miletus. Now, Thales was he was not a businessman. He was a philosopher, but he lived on Miletus, and it was known for its oil presses. And then a lot of intellectuals, they're like, oh, they put their nose, they know they'll never achieve great wealth, so they put their nose in the air when they look at wealthy people. Thales was not like that. He was an intellectual, and he's like, hey, I'm not going to knock being wealthy till I've tried it. So the way Thales made his money is in the oil press. And you might say, hey, what did he do? He started building oil presses. He started buying oil presses. That's not what he did at all. He bought an option to use oil presses. And so for 2 or 3 springs, he'd buy an option from all the owners of oil presses that said, hey, if I want to exercise the option, I'll pay you a fee to exercise the option to use your oil press. And so he spent a little bit of money getting the rights during harvest season to use all the oil presses. And so one harvest season, the island of Miletus went nuts. All the olives were very big. It was a boom. And so he exercised his option. He said to all the oil press owners, hey, I'm going to now use my option to use all your oil presses. He essentially had a monopoly on the island for oil presses. So here was his investment. He had a limited loss over a couple harvest seasons. He would, we'll call it 10 shekels. He'd give every farmer 10 shekels. And so he had a known loss. In a couple seasons, he lost. And his options weren't exercised, and so it was a known loss. He was like, hey, known loss, no problem. But when he hit big, when Miletus, that island, had a great harvest, he had unlimited gains. He had every oil press. He was able to press every olive on the island that season, and he had unlimited gains. And so that's how you want to start looking at how you invest. You don't want to look at your rate of return. You want to look at what is the potential for loss, and then consider rate of return. So when risk of ruin is present, rate of return is irrelevant. So you always want to invest on things where you have a limited loss. You always have to limit your losses, any investment you do. So how people fail as investors is they don't limit their loss. Here was the bet for Thales. He had a limited loss, unlimited gain. Most people have a limited gain and an unlimited loss. And so they have a risk of ruin and they sell out for just a little bit of gain. And so maybe they get lucky and maybe it goes unlimited, but it's very rare. A lot of times they have an unlimited downside. Never ever, if you learn one thing from this course, never ever invest in anything where you have an unlimited downside and a risk of ruin. This is how average people invest. They have a known upside. So like investing in the stock market, there's a consistent 10% return, but they have nothing protecting them unless they buy shorts or options to protect them, that they have an unlimited downside. So they can lose all of it. Like I invested in an oil well. I had a known upside, and which was a benefit on a tax return, and an unlimited downside. I lost all of my investment. And so remember, like I said, if you get one thing from this course, this ROI is irrelevant when risk of ruin is present. Most people talk about, I'm going to get a 10% return in this investment. I'm going to get an 8% return in this investment. That when people say that to me, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. My next question is, what's your risk of ruin? Do you have the ability to cap your losses? And so here's how many average people invest: is they have a roller coaster effect. You've heard Wall Street is a roller coaster effect. It's because they're up on when the market cycles up, and then they're down, and then they're up, and then they're down, and they're never capping their downside. So they could spend 30 years in a 401k, but if they lose everything, if they haven't capped their downside, doesn't matter what their rate of return was. Here's how the wealthy invest: known downside, a capped loss, and unlimited upside. And the result of investing is like you can take a loss as long as it's known and you can control the loss. And then you continue to stack unlimited upside investments over and over again. And so that's what I mean by a barbell concept. In real estate, you either win or you win big. So this was another idea from Taleb in his book, Skin in the Game. I believe this is the cover. You want to get into investments that, hey, maybe you're not the cool guy at the water cooler at work talking about how good your investments are, but you're still steadily getting wealthier. You're still winning. And then maybe there's options or there's a potential where you crush it, where you win it big. Like Ross Arrett, he's bought 14 houses for me. He's already got a 5 times return in around 6 years. He won big. I told him to look for an 8 to 10% cash on cash return, 5% appreciation, but he bought before COVID when the interest between 2020 and 2021, the housing values went up 20%. So he won big. But he was investing for was a small win, but he had the option for the win big. So how does this relate to single family investing? It relates this way. So single family house, what is your risk of ruin? It's really only your down payment. So now another example, when you own a business, what's your known downside? It's your time, your attention, and your capital. I've shown you on the appreciation, when we went through the appreciation module, that houses double in value every 20 years. So unlimited upside, the asset doubles. So let's talk worst case scenario with real estate. What would be your loss? Your loss would be, hey, I can't pay the mortgage payment. This has never happened with anybody who worked with us, but I'm just going to walk away from the house. The bank is going to keep the house and they have the risk. And so all you've lost is your down payment. Like I said, that's never happened with anybody invested with, but I'm just doing it as a thought experiment. Now, what's your unlimited upside? Leverage. You guys saw in the leverage video how you're getting a 25% return generally in real estate. Taxes, you're preserving your taxes, your greatest lifetime expense, and your cash flow. So when you stack the 4 pillars, you have a known 20% down payment downside, and then you're open to all the 4 pillars of a return. That's what I call an unlimited upside. The other thing by going through this course, by starting to buy rentals, is you have an unlimited upside of investor knowledge. You're becoming a more sophisticated investor in whatever you invest in. And so can we predict exactly where your cash flow, where your appreciation is going to be? Where we can't predict the tenant buy down the tenant leverage pay down, because that's in the amortization chart. And we can pretty accurately predict the tax savings. But do I know where you're going to end up on this curve exactly? No. Here's what I know. I know you have, when you buy single family rentals, Berkey's, the creative deals, you have a known downside and you have an unlimited upside with the 4 pillars. So it's a no-brainer of an investment. Now, remember that other chart we had where you have a known upside and unlimited downside? That's what most 401k and stock investments are. So do high prices, high rates, and lack of inventory change that curve? No. It's simply get into the asset with a known downside and unlimited upside. And those unlimited upside, once again, is the 4 pillars. So here's an example. 12082 Madrid's a Section 8 turnkey. It got a rent bump from $1,315 to $1,400. That's an unlimited upside. could not have predicted that a 6.5 bump in year one. So as you can see from the pro forma goes from an 8.5, $222 in cash flow a month to 292. The maximum cash flow, 354 to 432. Unlimited upside. With inflation and owning the asset over time, really the cash flow, the rent increase has an unlimited upside. If you look at my friend Ross Arrett, and I'll have a link to his YouTube video. So I mentioned him earlier, his cumulative return, and he started investing with us in 2018, but he's almost made $750,000 with us. This is as of 2024, summer of 2024. He's made $726,000. If you put this money in the stock market, it's been healthy since then. He would have made $200,000. So he's made a 3.5 times return investing in single family rentals versus the stock market. This is what I'm talking about. Unlimited upside. No idea he could have. He's just like Thales and Miletus. No idea we could have predicted he would have done this well. And you got to remember, I always talk about real estate as a bad haircut. This is the first flip I ever did when I left the Army. I overpaid on the house. I overpaid on the rehab. I didn't know what I was doing. What did I have to do to make $100,000 in this house? I just had to hold it for 10 years. So if you're new to real estate and you get antsy in the first year or so, just remember, real estate's like a bad haircut. Time will heal all wounds. And so now another thing I love about Anti-Fragile and Nassim Taleb is let's talk about the downside. Let's talk about recessions. And my belief is that when you have an unlimited upside, there's always one of the 4 pillars is a lever to pull. So how does real estate do in recessions? Even in recessions, rent has stayed historically positive. You might be asking why. Well, in recessions, generally people are moving out of their houses, selling houses at distressed prices. So a homeowner in an A-class neighborhood now becomes a renter in a B-class neighborhood. So people start graduating down, and that's what kind of protects rents in recession. So if you look at the Great Recession, rents still stayed positive. 2010, they stayed about even, but rents actually went up. Cut this, Jeremy. Rent growth has historically stayed positive, even recessionary periods. So everything in pink is a recession, and you can see rent still going up. Rents crushed in the tech bust. 2021, rent still went up even during COVID. So if you take one thing from this course, remember, ROI is irrelevant as long as risk of ruin is present. Seek to be an anti-fragile investor. Look for known capped losses, known downside, no cost with unlimited upsides. And you make a string of those type of investments before you know it. Even in spite of yourself, you become wealthy.